r/ask Reddit. Children of I want to talk to your manager parents. What has been your most embarrassing experience? I was 13 when this happened. My mom had made a reservation at a hotel for a trip. But when she got there the lady said there was some error with the reservation and that my mom's payment didn't go through. So the lady offered us a double bedroom for a discount. Rather than just taking the room, thanking the lady, and leaving, my mom decided the best course of action would be to scream. In the middle of a hotel lobby. Nobody is going anywhere till I get my fucking room. She then proceeded to pester the lady, who clearly couldn't do anything about it. Until eventually she called the police on my mom for public disturbance. Mortifying. Scene. Any fast food drive-thru. Worker. Mom. Can you please drive forward a little bit while your food finishes up? Mom. No. Folds arms. My dad just loved to argue. And he loved a deal. We were shopping in a department store. And I found a pair of pants I was mildly interested in. The pants were tagged at, let's say, $40. And the sign on the rack was all pants $25. I was mildly interested. I asked the sales clerk if they had them in my size. The clerk said those aren't supposed to be on that rack. My dad lost his shit and insisted on getting the pants for $25. And started asking for a courtesy discount on top of that. Escalated to the floor manager and the store manager. Meanwhile, I didn't want the pants. They were okay pants I guess. Nothing awesome. I just didn't care very much about them. I was more than happy to move on. I told my dad I didn't want the pants. But then he didn't care about what I wanted. He wanted the pants at the better price. Eventually after like an hour of arguing the store manager said we're not giving you the pants at that price. Take them or leave them at $40. So we left them. Which suited me just fine. Because I didn't want the pants. I might be late but my dad once asked the guy at the Verizon wireless store to give him his own social security number because he asked for my dad's. My dad walked out afterwards with some stranger's SS number on a post-it. I was a silent bystander because I really wanted my first phone. My father consistently returns food to grocery stores when he isn't satisfied with the quality. The worst is when he returns the 2-pound bricks of cheddar cheese because they went moldy before they should have. My mother is a nightmare with customer service. Even with the fact that her daughter works in customer service and deals with people like her on the daily. So many incidents stick out in my mind but one that really embarrassed me was we were at Walmart. The stocker was struggling and dropped their price scanner thing on the ground. I was going to go help her gather her things she was struggling with when my mom came out like a bat out of hell and yelled, "You know you should pick that up, people could trip," and then she darted off with a cart. I was so embarrassed I just walked away in shame. And when I pointed it out to my mom the girl dropped it on accident. She said well she should be more careful. Okay. About once a month my dad gets drunk and calls various customer service centers demanding stuff. Once he finally gets off the phone, frequently 45+ minutes later, he spends the next few days telling us all about how he slew the customer service dragon and boy people sure don't appreciate their customers nowadays blah blah blah. No duh. Dad, you're being an asshole. No one appreciates that. If you've worked for DirecTV customer service anytime since 1996, I apologize on behalf of my dad. Edit another story for y'all. I also remembered one time MCD's was having some kind of 2-for-1 breakfast sandwich deal going on where the total was about $3. He gets his breakfast, drives 25 minutes to work, realizes he is missing one of the sandwiches, and proceeds to call MCD's customer support every evening after work for a week to complain about his wasted $1.50. They gave him apologies. They gave him coupons. But he just wanted to yell. When I was 6 my mom took my brothers and I out to Golden Corral for dinner. She went up to the buffet, got a steak, and came back to the table. She's an avid A1 steak sauce fan and cannot, I repeat, cannot eat steak without it. She poured out the A1 onto her plate, tasted it, and was instantly horrified. She proceeded to pour out the Golden Corral steak sauce right next to the A1 and it matched perfectly. Outraged, She called over a waitress and eventually the manager, showing them her little experiment and how she exposed the great steak sauce fraud of 06. My brothers and I were scarred for the rest of our lives. I still have nightmares about it. Not exactly the question. But my dad was great with those customers. We had a small family business selling and installing fireplaces. For context. B. On more than one occasion. When getting the customer call or come in. After the installers had finished up and left the job site. To bitch about one of the men being rude or something. He could get this look of grave concern on his face. He would then go into a backstory. Saying things like oh no. Not again, or do the open mouth. Closed teeth inhale thing and just tsk and then start on with some nonsense about having told the guy before that it was his last warning and go on about how he was going to have to let them go. The blood draining from people's faces or the dead silence on the other end of the phone line was magical, followed by the customer frantically explaining that maybe it wasn't that bad or blaming themselves. He was never going to fire anyone. But he'd find out real quick who was just complaining for fun. Many of those customers have no qualms about getting the employee in trouble. But in general, folks don't want to jeopardize people's livelihoods. My mother did this in restaurants non-stop growing up. She would demand to see the manager because my burger, which I asked for medium, had some pink in it. Right, so my mum and me went shopping. And she dropped a melon on the way out. She then claimed it was bruised and demanded a full refund. When she refused, she shouted at customer service and demanded the manager. I just sat there with a kill me now expression on my face. After, one of the customer service employees gave me a chocolate bar. So 7-year me was happy. Not my parent but a grandparent. When I was around 10 years old, my grandmother went out and got us, her, my brother, and me, McDonald's. We got home and we didn't have napkins in the bags. No big deal. Right? We have paper towels and napkins in the house. Also, me and my brother are pretty good with not making any messes while we eat. Nope. Grandmother got us in the car. Drove back to McDonald's. Demanded a manager. And screeched about how upset she was that we didn't get any napkins. I wanted to just melt into the floor and disappear. It's just napkins. Nanny. Edit. Changed wording a little bit. The number of cashiers my father demanded the manager fire because they were too slow. Rang us up wrong. etc. Including one they actually did. I'll never forget that girl taking her Home Depot apron off and walking away sobbing. To his credit, I guess, my dad seemed surprised that it actually worked. Must have felt at least some level of guilt and never did it again. One time I was in a record store with my dad. He bought a record that was 19.99 euros. He paid using a 20 euro bill. The clerk took the money and put it in the register and gave my dad the CD in a plastic bag. I started walking off when I noticed my dad wasn't moving. As I turn around, I hear him say to the record store clerk, "You still have to give me my cent back." The clerk replies that they don't return 1 or 2 cents because they don't accept them and as such don't have them in the store. My dad replies by saying that is judicially impossible and asks for the manager. To make a long story short, one of the clerks gave my dad a cent from his own wallet. I don't like going to restaurants with her. She thinks that because she worked as a waitress for a year 35 years ago, it gives her the right to act like a complete arsehole to them. She also thinks not tipping them will encourage them to get their act together. Joke's on you, mom. I always find our server after seated. Give them a $20 and apologize in advance for your poor behavior. Edit. Yes. She knows what I think of it. She doesn't care. She believes she's sticking to her principles. And that tipping poor service, read, never had good service. Something will always be wrong. Will encourage fire laziness. It's not going to stop. If you wait on her, I am very sorry. Edit 2. She waited tables at a Pizza Hut when she was 20. She looks back at her time through rose-colored glasses. I worked hard. Went above and beyond to get my tips, then she yells at the waitress for trying to refill her drinks. Excuse me. Did I ask for a refill? Obviously logic and empathy are not her strong points. Not me, but one that I witnessed. I was at a cell phone store a few years ago. This was when phones first started to become water resistant. A kid had apparently gone swimming with his phone all day, and the phone had some discoloration to the screen and the touchscreen wasn't working correctly. The kid obviously knew he screwed up, and he kept asking the mom if they could just leave, that the phone still worked, and he would survive. The mom didn't even try to be civil. She came in and immediately started to be an abusive customer. I remember she laughed as she said, "Oh, you're gonna hate me. You should just get your manager now." I was young and my mom and stepdad took us to McDonald's. Somehow a nail or something got stuck in the tire which caused a flat. I'm not sure if it happened in the lot or not, but they were convinced it was. They went to talk to the manager. I don't remember exactly what their demands were, but they didn't get them. They literally went into the street waving people away saying that they were closed because they were mad. It just seemed like a ridiculously excessive thing to do. My mom needed to return some shirts at the mall because they didn't fit right. It was past the allotted time that she had to return them. So the employee said that there wasn't anything she could do. My mom started screaming at this girl who was probably about 16 or 17, calling her names and demanding to speak to the manager. When the manager told my mom that they couldn't do anything and that the return policy was on the receipt, my mom threw a fit and knocked over a display that was next to the register and stormed out of the store. I was probably 6 or 7 at the time and I was mortified. I apologized for her behavior and picked up what I could before she started calling for me to follow her. The manager was super sweet to me though and told me that I was a good kid and to stick up to my mom when I could get away with it. I wasn't there for this, thank God, but my mum once had a lengthy email argument of complaints to a hotel's restaurant because their smothered chicken wasn't smothered enough. One such email included the dictionary definition of smothered. My father-in-law and stepmother-in-law are the culprits in my case. They are absolute monsters at restaurants towards the wait staff. They seem to enjoy the game of how many annoying little hoops they can make servers jump through. It's too cold in here. It's too hot in here. The music is too loud. The salsa is too hot. They've made them do 3 or 4 things by the time we even order our food. Then my mother-in-law loves to order something spicy off the menu, but then tell them to make it not spicy. And these are not 4-star restaurants, just simple diners and so forth. One time my father-in-law was particularly rude over a Coke machine being out of order. He complained to the manager and stiffed the waitress. When I realized that he didn't tip, I called back to the restaurant, let them know some of us at the table were happy with the service, and asked them to run my credit card for her tip. And that was the last time I'll let him pay for our meal. Edited for spelling. I think every memory I have of my mom is her yelling at a customer service employee either on the phone or in their face. I always felt bad for the employees. I remember at least one instance in which I felt really embarrassed. I did an online program that was geared towards new drivers. It was all about driving safety and took forever to do. At the end of the course, the young driver had the opportunity to get lower insurance rates. So I had to call a customer service representative and confirm personal information as well as answer some things from the course in order to get the rates. My mom kept insisting I put the phone on speaker. Every time I did, the rep would tell me to take it off of speaker. My mom would then try to follow me around the house trying to listen in and the rep could hear her and said she needed to stop. My mom got mad at the rep and I ended up not getting the lower rates on my insurance because the rep was fed up. I was out to breakfast with my mom, and our waitress straight up disappeared. We sat for a good 30 minutes after having ordered nothing but eggs. It was an off time, so the diner was pretty quiet. It was as if our waitress had just evaporated. Naturally, my mom asked someone if we could speak with the manager. She stops by. My mom lets her know what's happened and asks if she can check on our waitress, our food, etc. 10 minutes later the manager shows up with our food and the waitress in tow. She put our food down, then proceeded to rip into the waitress. This poor woman broke down in tears, apologizing profusely. We felt awful. Didn't even bother finishing our food. Once the manager was out of sight, my mom found the waitress, gave her a hug, and a larger tip than usual. It was rough, leaving us both sufficiently embarrassed. When I was a young child on a long distance flight, my mother let me and my brother sleep on the floor. For safety reasons, the flight attendants told my mother that we were not allowed to sleep on the floor. She started to argue with the flight attendants, who then turned to the pilots. The pilots threatened to turn the plane around unless we get up from the floor, but she continued to argue. The pilots announced they were about to turn around because of my mother. So all the passengers got pissed. Eventually she caved in when she had all passengers and flight crew on a Boeing 747 against her. My mom has been this person regularly throughout my life, but I do have one positive story with it. She and I went to eat at Portillo's when I was a teenager, and we sat in the back of the restaurant where it was more private so we can eat in peace. About 10 minutes into our meal, 2 people come into the empty area and sit down 2 tables away from us. Turns out it was a manager and an employee that was getting written up. The manager was being a complete shat towards the employee, criticizing and belittling them. My mom put down her food and walked over and started yelling at the manager for being such an asshole. She went on a rant about how rude and wrong it was of him to do this in front of the public 2 tables away from customers and really let him have it. She demanded the phone number of the manager above him, and we left after she received it. I was pretty embarrassed at the time, but as I got older I realized that she was standing up for that employee and how wrong that manager really was. I'm not 100% sure what she did with that phone number because I lived with my dad and I had to go home after that meal. Before Value Village, Savers in the States I think, changed policies. She would cut tags to get discounts since the cashiers would basically make up whatever price they thought it would be on the spot. If they highballed it, she would get a manager involved, and I hated that. I was with my parents on vacation and the hotel put charges on the bill by accident. My mom marched to the front desk and demanded to see the manager. There was a long line, but she cut right in front of it. The manager wasn't very helpful, probably because she was rude. So my mom went to all the other customers in line and told them that the hotel was a scam and they were ripping us off with fake charges. She made a scene. The hotel called the police and we were escorted off the premises by actual cops. I died inside. Ugh. My dad. He can be such a prick if you get his order wrong. It could be fast food or a nice sit-down restaurant. He often yells at wait staff if they undercook his steak. It has to be well done or he claims to have lost his appetite. One time we went to Burger King when I was younger and we sat down to eat. He took one bite of his burger, spit it out and immediately started bitching about it being undercooked. He cut in front of everyone in line to yell at the cashier. Then he asked who was the cook. When the cook appeared, he launched his burger, hitting the poor kid directly in the face with a lidless burger. He's now banned for life from Burger King. My mum demanded to see a cafe's hygiene certificate when she saw an employee go from cutting cake in the kitchen to handling money at the till, even though the real problem is going the other way. My mom asked me to call her a taxi via an app. She ended up calling me multiple times complaining about how the driver didn't use the route she thought was best. She never owned a car and doesn't know how to drive, even though the guy just used the best possible route the navigator suggested. She ended up getting out halfway and using Subway. The driver proceeded to call me in tears, completely shocked, unsure of what he did so wrong, and apologizing. I felt like total shit. I never called her a cab again. Edit. First silver thank you. I worked at Best Buy. I stopped in with my mom one day because she wanted to buy me the Star Wars DVD box set for my birthday. I had a huge crush on the girl that was working the customer service counter. Well, the DVD set rang up $10 more than it was priced. And my mom deliberately didn't say anything until after the transaction so she could claim the effing $5 Michigan scan law bounty. My crush didn't know how to process it and the manager was busy. So my mom tore into her about how it was her job and how she should understand how to do things at my job. To a girl I liked. My life was misery for a while afterward. Edit. RIP my inbox. No. I never got the courage up to ask her out and she left the store afterwards. Thanks for watching, mate. Make sure to smash that star button for more high quality content.